if you're sticking around. What we wanted to do, though, is just talk to you a bit about our plans and what we've been doing in Australia for quite some time now, for the last 5 or 6 years, so that you have a bit of an idea of what our plans are in different places of the world as well. So in Australia, probably 7 years ago now, we started a non-profit organisation called God's Way. God's Way Limited, it's called. It's an Australian non-profit organisation. Mary and I are the founding members, but we're not the directors of the organisation. We were for a while, but we've found some people who we feel are of good spiritual development, who we can trust while we're travelling, and those 3 people are managing that organisation in Australia. And that organisation has a number of, at the moment, 4 different properties, but we're trying to sell 1 property so that we can build our first auditorium, right? And our first auditorium that we're trying to build in Australia is an open-air auditorium where we can fit 120 people, but also have some toilets and other things that we need to sort of so we can run events like this, but probably be open-air in the sense that, for a while anyway, it'll be open air so that, whatever the weather is, well, that's what we'll be feeling.
It doesn't get cold like it does in Austria, in Australia.
That's right.
Well, not where we are anyway.
Yeah. Sometimes we get cold winds, but it never goes in that place generally, except in the mornings, it never goes minus Celsius. It's always positive Celsius. And during the summer, of course, it's more like 40 or 35 Celsius. So plenty warm enough to hold events and things like that. So this organisation we started because we wanted to do a number of things with people, and one of the things that we wanted to do was to help people who visit us to have a practical way to learn about where they're not being humble. So we have what are called these humility in practice days. And depending on how many visitors we have and whatever, we often have them anywhere up to 5 days a week, every week. So Emma has been there. So if you put your hand up, Emma. So Emma's experienced a little bit of it over the last few months, haven't you? Yeah. And of course we've had visitors. Yor has also, so out the back there, Yor. He's experienced it well. I think you were there for 3 or 4 months, weren't you? Yeah,
3 months.
3 months.
Yep.
Yeah, so you sort of get to know the experience and so forth of, having some feedback, very frequent, generally feedback, and dealing with things as you're working. And a lot of the programs at the moment are environmental in nature, so we're fixing the environment, but in the process of fixing the environment, we're trying to fix people's humility as well. Does that make sense?
Help them to fix it.
Help them become more humble.
Yeah.
So its major purpose at this stage is educating a person about the very first quality that you need to develop, which is that humility quality. And that's been the focus. But of course, there's other goals, and some of those other goals include eventually having a place where we can meet regularly in Australia. And it's our plan in the future that we would set up eventually these particular, what we'd call learning centres. We're calling them God's Way Learning Centres, so learning about God's Way as a centre. And we're hoping to have some of these around the world. At least one in Europe, at least one in each continent. In the end, is our desire. Where when Mary and I do travel, we will eventually travel to those locations, and that'll be our primary location of teaching. Not the only location, but because we'll still travel to other places, but it'll be our primary location of teaching, hopefully, when we travel. So that's our goal.
There's a lot of benefits to having a venue that we don't have to hire, we don't have to book, that we can just use whenever we desire or whenever a group of people want it. And we could leave it with equipment and everything so that we literally just have to come and see everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, to give you an idea of what happens when we travel, we do end up spending quite a lot of money, as you can imagine. There's flights from Australia to get to Europe, firstly, and then, of course, we have to get another flight to get to the location in Europe. Also, we've got to hire the venue. So to give you an example, with this particular venue, this venue cost us, I think it was 15, a total, with the speaker hire, which was a separate hire and everything, it's around about €1,400 for this hire for the 3 days. Now, that is a very reasonable price, actually. We've had some venues quote us €10,000 and things like that. So €1,400 is about as reasonable as we could find in Austria, to be honest. So a venue around about this size, which is around about allowing for up to 60 people or so, generally costs us around that amount. And Mary and I try to reduce the costs of the venues, because if we can do that, then the shared cost of the venue is not so high, right? When the shared cost gets up to 40 or 50 euros per person, and some venues we're wanting to charge like 120 euros per person per day and that kind of thing, it becomes very prohibitive for people to come to a free event. We're holding a free event and it's not really free anymore because it's so much, it costs so much, you know. So what we try to do is we try to reduce the costs, but obviously, you know, we pay those costs. So an example of this venue, we're paying around about $1,400 for the venue. Mary and I have accommodation. It's around about the same figure for the accommodation for the time we're staying. And then we also had to hire a car to get from Munich in this case. And so that has also cost us a similar amount again. So by the time you're done, most places we go to, without our food or without anything else, are usually costing us around 4,000 to 5,000 euros for every place we visit. And as you can imagine, Mary and I don't have, you know, we live by donations, so we're very reliant on your donations, and it's thanks to your donations for the large part that we're here. But I must point out that the donations that for us to get to Europe, were a third of the donations came from Australia. So they actually gifted money, even though they weren't going to personally benefit from you hearing this. They felt that you should have the experience, and so they contributed. And another third, or not quite a third, came from Mary and myself. Actually, we've been trying to save up for a while to build a house for us, because we're gifting our house to God's Way Limited. We're gifting it to be used as the office.
So some of you who've been to our property would know, but most of you haven't. At the top of our property, there's the studio where we've filmed a lot of the
Q&As
that you've seen.
Yep.
And that's sort of purpose-built, and it's bigger than our house. Well,
Yep.
it's about,
It's a little bit bigger than our house.
Yeah, bigger than our house, and our house is directly next to it. So,
so we have a 2-bedroom house that's about 86 square metres or something like that. It's quite small. It's smaller than this room, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where we live, but because we still want to have some privacy and do our processing, and God's Way hasn't had an office at all. It's been in
For the last 7 years.
It's been in Eloise's lounge room.
Yeah.
We decided, well, it's a great idea. People can use the studio a lot more in God's Way if they can.
We're not there.
If we're not there, they won't disturb us, and they could make our small home into an office. And if we just built something further back on the property, we'd still have our privacy, and but operations could expand in God's Way, which is what we want to be able to happen.
We want people to be able to come there and do things like video editing or audio editing, and also some translation and other things like that, without them thinking they're bothering Mary and I every time they come. And also Mary and I, because we have a goal that we want to travel 6 months of the year, 4 months overseas and 2 months in Australia every year from now on. So that's our goal, so that we get to see you more regularly. You know, it's been quite some time since we saw anybody overseas, aside from when they visited us. So what we've done is we've changed our sort of life around a fair bit, where we're no longer the directors of God's Way, and that's other people are responsible for that now. And we still have meetings with those directors and we mentor those directors, but we're not involved in the day-to-day running of the God's Way organisation anymore. But it is an important organisation for us because we're still founding members, we're still members of the organisation, and anybody in the world can become a member, but there's certain criteria to become a member. And those criteria has a lot to do with what we've been teaching you, you know, that you're humble and you're truthful and loving and you've received some of God's love and things like that, and have a desire to serve other people rather than just to get for self. And so we have a sort of, you could say it's a program where we have people just working who participate, and then some of those participants, if they grow in love and they grow in desire and passion, they become volunteers. And so we have a number of volunteers now that are volunteer. I can't remember how many. I think it's about 12 or 15 or something like that, isn't it?
At the most, yeah.
12, I think, something like that. There's probably 30 or 40 who participate regularly every week, and then there's about 12 that are volunteers, and then once you've worked through becoming a volunteer and work through your stuff about being a volunteer and things like that, and have some passion, then often we appoint them as you can apply to be a member, and a member is a financially contributing person. It's $100 a year, so it's not very much. Or $100 a month, sorry. Not very much, but it's enough to keep the company, the basics of the company running. The company costs around 60,000 Australian dollars a year to run because it has 4 properties that it has to pay for, and it has around about, at the moment, about $2.5 million of assets, of which we're getting rid of some so that we can build a hall. So that's all of those assets, and absolutely every one of those assets has been gifted. So nothing's been earned or anything. They've all been gifted from different people. Some people have gifted significant amounts. Mary and I gift to the organisation all the time, and many of the directors have also gifted to the organisation all the time. But on top of that, we receive gifts from other sources. And any person in the world can give it a gift, and that gift will be used for that purpose of helping people develop humility, and also for the purpose of trying to help share. The focus is sharing God's truth on earth. So that's the focus of the organisation, God's Way.
We should say as well that there's quite a large-scale environmental recovery thing already happening on a couple of the properties.
Yes,
as well.
we have a 22-tonne bulldozer and a 22-tonne excavator, and those things are being used in the recovery process, so that instead of being used to destroy the land, they're being used to recover the land. And already we've recovered around 7 acres, 8 acres, or maybe even 10 acres nearly now, of land where it was completely bare land before, and now there's trees up to, probably up to 8 metres high. This has happened over the last 7 years. And what we've done is we've also worked on finding methods to recover land very quickly, particularly in arid environments. So the environment that was there before, if you look at it on Google Maps, you'll see that it was completely barren of vegetation for nearly 12 years. And now we have, like I said, about 8 metre high trees on that same land. So things have changed quite a lot, and we've worked out many very good techniques for recovering the environment and other things like that. And as we've recovered the environment, the insects have come, and the birds have come, and the animals have come, and there's a whole ecosystem that's getting built actually, and it's really fascinating to watch what happens to it every year, because it just develops more and more and more every year, where there's more and more abundance, and it develops every year. So that's what the dozer and the excavator are being used for primarily. We also have, other things that have been donated, like there's a big farm tractor. So when I say big tractor, it's only a 100 horsepower tractor, but it's big enough to do the jobs. We also have a big farm trailer, which is a 12-tonne trailer. So it means we can shift soil around and move everything around. So it's a proper operation, right? Like a fairly big farm. And at the moment, God's Way is responsible for about 1,000 acres of land. So that's a fairly large allotment. Now, God's Way, the intention of God's Way in the future is to become more and more focused on sharing and using these tools that we've got, all of these implements, and to actually share not only about God's truth and not only about having these humility and practice days, but also share information about things like how to recover the environment and how to improve other things like that. So there's a fairly wide scope of goals, and I think online in the God's Way website, which I should probably mention, it's godsway.net. I think you can actually download the constitution of the company and read the constitution, and you'll see its goals.
And you can also download sort of annual reports that we've done the last few years to see pictures and descriptions of what we're doing.
Yeah. So you'll see there's a lot of activity going on there, and we've had that activity going on for now 7 years. So it's pretty well established activity now, and it's going quite well in terms of helping people grow, you know. If you look at this website, you'll see all the activities of that God's Way organisation, and Mary and I are pretty passionate about that organisation, like in terms of helping it progress and helping it grow, and also sorting out any problems as to why it's not progressing as well. So that has taken up a fair portion of our time over the last 6 years or so. On top of that, Mary and I run all of their tech. So I do all their tech work. So
you say you do,
yeah. So we're talking the storage of nearly a petabyte of data at this stage that hasn't been edited. There's a large amount of data and a large amount of storage. You're talking just in terms of storage, it's nearly $250,000 worth of equipment just to store the data.
Which was all donated as well.
Which has all been donated as well. Yeah. So it's a fairly big sort of operation, and we're trying to streamline it in such a way that more sharing can happen. Because at the moment we're just sort of we're collecting lots of data. There's photos of all the growth of everything, the trees, the plants and everything, the bird life. There's photos of what we've done, all the projects we've done. And we'd like to share all that, but of course there's nobody... We haven't got enough people who are in a good space of development to actually put all the data together and share it all and all those kind of things. So we need just more people who have good development to share all those things. But we're pretty close to geared up to share. So it's just a matter now of finding the people, right? And really, if we've done it the wrong way around, we should have found the people first. But that's how it's gone. You know, people have donated funds, so we got things set up, but. It probably would have been better if we found the people first. Then we would have been able to, get a lot more things done. But at the moment, the sharing is going, it's happening, but it's sort of like nowhere near the capacity of what we could be sharing. But that being said, it's a wonderful project, and Mary and I have been enjoying it a lot. But also, it's been very busy, as you can imagine, setting up all these things. The tech and the properties themselves. There's 4 different properties at the moment. Looking after them and caring for them and running programs where people can work on them and things like that. And it takes quite a lot of organisation. But our goal is to have one of those in every continent. So what we needed first was to set up one where we're living or near where we're living. It's about 5 kilometres away from where Mary and I actually do, so that we could teach people what to do, how to run it and all those other things, so that when we set up in another country, we've got a group of people who can go to that country and help that country set up as well. Does that make sense? So that's the goal. And it's a sort of a slow process because it's a lot about people's hearts, it's got to be motivated sincerely. We're not interested in it being a quick thing. We're not interested in it being something where people get arrogant and think they're going to be the solution to the problems or anything like that. We're more interested in it being a heartfelt growth that is motivated by the hearts of people. So that's our goal. And
in future years, if we come back, well, we plan to come back annually if we can.
If we can, but that's dependent upon donations, of course. Yeah.
But certainly some of the directors of God's Way are already really excited to come with us and do humility and practice days with people who come to the talks, and maybe give you some presentations about projects that have happened and the spiritual lessons that were learned in doing the projects. So they're all very excited to do that and to meet all of you. It was a bit, a lot of them wanted to come with us. So
on this trip.
So they could meet you and
We're not really yet geared up for some of them to come because if they did come, then we'd need another group of people left over to
run
back
things.
home, and we haven't yet found another group of people who we could trust as well as we do trust their current group of people who are running the organisation.
While we're on this trip, they are building a very large water catchment shed while we're here.
So 25 metres long, 10 metres wide, 150,000 litres of water. In Australia, water is like precious.
Yes.
Particularly where we live, we don't get much of it per year. And we use it for drinking. The water we catch, we drink, we use it for showering and all that kind of stuff. So we need a water catchment area because God's Way is using more water because there's more people there, so we needed to do that. And so I designed that before I left, and I actually, Mary and I paid for it as well. And then we've given it to the team, and they're hopefully building it. We don't know how far they've got
now.
So far.
We'll see.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how far they've got, but I think they're having a bit of engineering issues because there was a few engineering issues before I went away that I had to resolve, and they're just implementing my resolution to those engineering issues now. But once they've done that, they'll be building it. And we'll have new water storage so we can have more people come. So one of the goals in our studio is that we can have a regular 40 people come every week to the studio while we're there. And also that God's Way can run smaller events where they do small presentations in that studio as well. So as well as be the office and do all of the data sharing and all those kind of things. So that's the goal of God's Way. Mary and our main focus is divine truth, and we have an organisation called Divine Truth Proprietary Limited that Mary and I own. We're the only ones in it, but God's Way we expect eventually to have thousands of members. We're hoping, like all around the world, and eventually have you could say. Suppose in each continent at least, a God's Way limited in each continent. That's the end goal, with the same goals, with the same structure, with the same focus on spiritual development, that kind of thing. And eventually, we expect people may live there, live there. But at this stage, our focus is more just making it a centre for learning rather than people living there. So that's our goal. So is there any questions about that before I proceed with what plans we have about that? No? No?
When you said gifting, is it better to donate or ask for specific things you would need?
Good question.
Sometimes there are things we need, like an excavator or something like that, and people have gifted like a second-hand excavator and a second-hand dozer. Sometimes we have expenses on those equipment, and people give some money to pay for those expenses. So just recently, our excavator needed new tracks, because it's done so many thousand hours of work now. It needed new tracks, and so the new tracks cost about $22,000. So, somebody donated the funds to do that as well. And there was also some damage to the excavator boom that was done. Well, we don't know how it was done because it wasn't done by any of us. So it must have been done when we put the excavator in to get the tracks. But nobody owned up to it. But we had to fix it so that, somebody donated towards that. And so, there are projects you can donate towards. There's just a general expenses you can donate towards. There's also time, your time and energy which is really appreciated as well. Like, just going there for a few months if you want to go there and have the experience. We're not yet really geared up to accommodate people well at this stage, but there's a lot of ways in which you can participate. And we're hoping that if we set these things up in, like one in Europe, for example, at this stage our feeling is sort of between probably the border between Spain and Portugal, somewhere in that region. That we can get the same thing running there, but it's going to be very dependent upon the sole condition of people who can stay running it while we're not there. And that's going to be the tricky thing, because what we've found in the past is that many people, if they don't have the right condition, they get arrogant and they mislead people with truth. And then on top of that, they have a tendency to take from the organisation rather than giving to it. So at the moment, actually, this organisation has no paid employees at all. So even all the directors, they're giving all of their time, which is full time. So there's 3 directors at the moment, and this is something also that you can donate towards.
Can I just mention on the donating, if you go to godsway.net, there's each quarter now we're publishing kind of what our expenses have been and what projects you might like to support specifically and how to do that. And
what projects are on hold, what projects are actually going.
That kind of thing.
And the expenses, but those expenses don't include paying the people running it. Yeah. So Eloisa, she's changed the last name to Sparks. Isn't that a great last name? So it's Eloisa Sparks is one of the directors. She's the managing director at the moment. And then there's the person you know as Cornelius, right? His actual name in this life is David Walsh, right? You could say he's the building director, the construction director of the company, and he's managing all the building projects that we're doing. And then we've got Phoebe Bruce is her name. Hello, Phoebe, if you're listening to this. They're listening to all the recordings each week, so I'm sure they'll hear that. Phoebe is like the sharing director. She's focusing her attention on sort of background management and sharing, online sharing. So almost every post that God's Way produces that you get, if you subscribe, you'll get a post fairly regularly. She prepares all of those, does all of that work. There's quite a lot of work she does in that regard. And the 3 of them together are, learning how to manage, because none of them have managed an organisation in their life. Unlike myself, where I've managed many organisations in my life, they haven't. And so they're learning how to do it, and they're brave, as well as, have a good relationship with God as well. So those 3 directors, they don't get paid. So the only way that they can actually do it full time is by receiving donations from people. So they trust that they're living the same way Mary and I are living, actually. They're just trusting that they receive donations to people. Sometimes Mary and I do donate to them. If we have enough donations of our own and they don't, we give them some funds as well. But lately they've become more self-sufficient in the reception of donations. But they don't live on much, on the average. On the average, it's much the same as what Mary and I live on, which is around about 1,500 Australian dollars a month each. So for each person, which isn't very much. It's about 800 euros a month, something like that.
Jay, it's 3:00, just so you know.
Yep. All right, so that's the God's Way organisation in Australia. That's sort of independent, really, of Mary and I and what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is we're trying to go around the world now and just share truth, share more truth, share truth, and have face-to-face, not tech interactions, but face-to-face interactions with people so we can share more truth. And so that's our focus. Our focus is now changed a bit because we've set this up now and it's running quite smoothly. So now we want to get back to the focus of sharing sharing truth with people. So our goals are to go around the world quite regularly, of course, based on the donations we receive. We're hoping to do it once a year is the goal. But as you can see, every time we need to hire a venue and we need to hire accommodation and we need to hire getting there and flights and everything, the costs rack up. And in this particular trip, we're doing 14, is it?
Events?
15 events.
Formal events.
15 formal events.
Yeah.
And every one of those events has similar cost to this.
Yeah.
So by the time you add it up, you can see you chew up the funds. And we sort of feel like in the long run, it'd be better to have those funds go to a centre, like a centre somewhere, rather than sort of go out into the world and not ever really come back, you know.
Yeah. And it would be great to give everyone the opportunity to be a part of building those centres.
Yeah.
When we have a meeting there, to actually come and contribute to that land and
share
donate
in the process and learn,
your resources in that way,
yeah,
to help sort of creating something lasting.
So the purpose of God's Way when we created it was actually to allow divine truth to just keep sharing and focus on sharing the truth in the world, and sort of God's Way sort of support the sharing. But the other focus was that there's educational programs that need to happen, like environmental educational process, the education about love and humility and truth and
raising children
educating, and all sorts of things.
Water resources.
Yeah, if you read the Constitution, you'll see it's a very wide scope Constitution, and we're hoping that that will happen over the course of the future. Of course, the main focus at this stage is the sharing, because without the sharing, the benefit of learning the truth is limited. Yeah. So Mary and I, which is Divine Truth, and so for us, our website, of course, which is Mary and I don't get to change it very much at the moment, unfortunately, is divinetruth.com. And up until now, I've been totally responsible for doing all the tech. So, and I can't see that changing until I find a person who's passionate about God and passionate about the truth, but also understands tech to the degree, hopefully, that I do. I've had I'm 60 now, and I started in tech when I was 17. Way back before you guys, probably many of you would have even known about the IBM PC and all that. Way back before then, even, and I've had lots of engineering experience in technology. So, as well as running companies, as well as property development and other things like that. So I've got plenty of experience in these things. And what I really need is to be able to have somebody who has a similar sort of desire to get that experience that can take over a lot of the tech from me, so that we're more available to share. But we don't know when that will occur. But up until that time, I'll be doing that. And so when I say I'll be doing it the least amount I possibly can, because we want to spend more time sharing with people. Yeah. So one of the issues we do face when we're travelling is that if we have the events too close together every week, I don't have enough time even to sort out the audio or anything. I've just got enough time to strip it off, back it up, and then we're on to the next event. And so I don't even have enough time to edit and put it up. And so in future, what we're hoping next year and following years is that we'll sort of back off on how often we're doing it. So we've got a sort of a week in between where I can do all of those things and get the material up. Because without getting the material up, it only benefits you. But if I can get the material up, it benefits thousands of people. And thank you to the guys who are doing some video recording and everything, because that means that I don't have to do it, right? And
we don't have to bring all the gear.
I don't have to bring all that gear and everything, because it's a major nightmare, trust me, travelling with video equipment all over the world as well as our audio equipment, which is already 2 bags full. And to have those people do it, which is a great thing. So thank you guys for doing it here. We had some people doing it in Brussels as well. And we don't know who's going to do it in the future, because it's just sort of like ad hoc happens. when they share, so you end up with all these bootleg copies, I suppose you'd call them, of these events, and who knows where they're going to be? We don't know. In the end, we're asking the people to give us the sort of recordings and everything, but we can't edit them. We haven't got time to, and all that jazz. So we found ourselves getting buried in editing, and we had no time for sharing. So Mary and I are capable of editing and everything, but the net result was the more we edited, the less we shared. And that was the opposite of what we wanted to do. So,
and we both really feel that our main purpose on earth, apart from regaining our connection with our soul and God, is to share with people, in person.
Yeah.
And the more we can do that, the hopefully the more benefit there will be.
Yeah. Ben, you want to ask? Just Mike, if we can see.
Many people ask me how we broadcast the videos.
Yes.
Maybe we could write it down.
Sure.
It's.
Do you want to come up and just write it down?
Yep. Yep.
Gott und die Welt. It's
God and the world. Yeah. In German. Yeah. God and the world in German. Dash DT. Good day. There you go. Yeah. Good day. So, Emma.
On YouTube, I'm sorry.
Oh, and YouTube. Is there a YouTube particular channel?
That is the channel.
Oh, that is
That's
the YouTube.
channel.
Yeah, this is.
That is the YouTube channel. Emma.
The talks from last weekend are on a different channel.
Yes.
And so I could...
So last weekend was?
It's at Exposure.
At Exposure.
3569.
3569.
And I'm hoping to be able to send more video recordings to go on
To that
channel
one as well.
too. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Good day. Yep. So that's what's happening at the moment. Now, we have no control over those things, obviously, Mary and I. The only place we have it is on divinetruth.com. We don't have any Facebook. We don't have any other thing. It's divinetruth.com or YouTube, our YouTube channels. But as I said, very dependent on the time I have. And as you can imagine, I don't have a lot of it. So, it just depends on when I get a bit of time to upload things or whatever. If you get to these other places, you'll be able to probably get them quicker than you'll get them from me. So our goal, of course, is eventually to have a little team that actually does it for us and does all the sharing part for us. So Mary and I can just spend our time teaching and somebody else captures it and shares it and so forth. But as you can imagine, when you're travelling around, every new person you add to the travel adds to the cost. And so it can become very expensive having a little team with you. And so unless we get those kind of donations that allow for that, we really can't do it up until then. So at the moment, we're limited to how we are, mostly because there's a limitation of funds and people in terms of helping out, or who are in a good condition, who don't argue with me about things. And the temptation to argue comes from the fight with the truth, right? And so, we find quite a lot that people say they want to help, but then they start arguing with me, and I don't have the tolerance for that.
Not anymore.
Yeah, if we go back to Olga. Not anymore. I used to have a tolerance for that, but not anymore.
Is there another possibility to support you, not only with the donation, but in another way in Europe?
It's difficult at the moment to remotely support us. Mm-hmm. Obviously, one way is to translate material.
Ah, great.
Because of course, people are hearing this today. It's all in English, isn't it? And it'd be nice if there was some subtitles in German or subtitles in French or whatever, wouldn't it? Because that way more people can. So that's one way that remote help can be. But we also found that you've got to be fairly connected to the meaning of what we say in order to subtitle what we say. So, and that requires some emotional and development with God as well. And it's very hard for Mary and I to correct anything you do wrong because to do that we would have to know the language, and you know what I mean. So it requires a lot of sincerity as well to not change things and so forth. But that's one way that can help practically. There's probably other ways, and that is, the biggest practical way to help is to receive more love. The more love you receive, the more you'll be a reflection of that love in your life. And then people ask, where did you hear that from? And, why did you do that? And you can refer to the truth to them, and that spreads then. If people see you becoming more unloving or more arrogant, then of course, it's not going to spread then, is it? So that's the biggest way to help. And then there are some secondary practical ways to help. But until we get a centre in Europe, it's going to be harder to help remotely when it's like 13,000 kilometres away. And what I find too is that most of the internet now is focused towards downloading things, speed-wise. It's all focused towards downloading things. So uploading things, which is what we need to do to get material back to Australia while we're travelling and all that kind of stuff, it's very, very slow. Like in here in INNSBRUCK, we're getting like 100 kilobit uploads, which means that if I'm recording 150 gigabytes of data, just audio, and if it was video, it would be more like 2 terabytes of data over 3 days. It would take forever, literally like 6 months to upload the data. So there's practical limitations of how much can be done remotely, is what we've found. So a lot of the work will need to be done on site.
Okay.
And we're hoping in the future that, like, when we come to Europe, for example, and if we came to a God's Way Centre in Europe, there'd be a little editing team in Europe that follows around while we're in Europe, and then they go back to the God's Way Centre, and then they edit all that material and get it all out from that God's Way Centre. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we go, say, to England or to the US or something, and the same thing happens. That's our goal in the long run, but I can't see that happening in the next 5 years. It'll be more like the next 10 or more years that those kind of things will probably happen.
It really depends on the changes that individuals make.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could happen quicker. But
Yeah. And we're not trying to, with you guys, as you can see, we're not trying to say everything's going to be easy making these changes. It's not going to be easy making these changes. It's going to require dedication. It's going to require heart, like passion, heart for it. And so, obviously developing the heart for it is part of the issue, isn't it? Yeah. So, but when it comes to sharing divine truth, fundamentally in the spirit world, everybody who hears it shares it. And so this is a part of the issue too, becoming brave enough to share it in your own life. Many of you we know listen, and you have your private listening, and you go, oh, it's wonderful and I like it, but you're very afraid of sharing it in public because of course it means potential attack, and people will accuse you of being in a cult and all these other things, and none of that's true. Of course, Mary and I don't run a cult. We're not. It'd be too much hard work to run a cult. It's already enough hard work just going around sharing with people the truth. You're really running one. But the average person will accuse you of that just because I'm saying I'm Jesus, right? These kind of problems are not going to go away soon, and you need to have some bravery and let the truth affect your heart, and as it affects your heart, then you will want to share, and then the more you want to share, sometimes you want to help us share, but sometimes you'll just share yourself, like I'll put this together and share that, and I'll put this together and share that kind of thing. Yeah. Any little bit of sharing helps. Yeah. So this is why we encourage you while you're here to take your own recordings, and don't feel afraid of sharing them. I know there's private things that are said here sometimes, but we don't care. And we're trying to teach you not to care either. Nothing's really private anyway. At the end of the day, every spirit knows exactly what you're doing. So why try and keep it private? It's not really much point to that. So what we want to do is encourage you to share the truth that you learn. And sometimes you feel not qualified, or sometimes you feel like, I'm not in a good enough space myself. Well, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, who knows the benefit from you sharing the truth? And you might find, all I need to do is just share some material here, or this is what I've learnt, or whatever. Yeah, you want to ask? Yep.
If I understand you correctly, then we can share filtering through our creation as well. Like, I don't know, writing something.
Exactly. You don't need to ask us. Some people feel they need to ask us, but you don't need to ask us. Everything we produce is in public domain. You can just grab it and share it. Also, anything that you produce, obviously, just be careful, because make sure it is the proper understanding of truth. Because if you share something that's not the proper understanding of truth, then Mary and I are going to need to correct it at some point, right? But it's better if you know it's the proper understanding of truth, even if it's just a description of the spheres, or a description of what happens when you progress, or just, it can be minor things, but you never know who is going to be attracted and to what you share, and also how you share. Some people might share online, but to my mind, sharing in person is often much more effective. So, but that requires bravery too, doesn't it? So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if we come to Em and then up the back to Stephen. Yeah.
I'm going to most of the talks and taking audio recordings, and I thought if anybody would like to be on my list to receive them, if they wanted to tick on the sign-in sheet.
Yep.
And then I can add them to the list, and I send them out usually the evening of the talk.
Yeah, and that assumes that your sign-in sheet has the right email address, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so some of you we
Check
found
that.
haven't put the right email address in, so you just make sure that it's the right email address when you check that sign-in sheet. So eventually what we're hoping to do is that many of you just share because you want to share, and, like all of that. This is the way things grow naturally, not through some organised structure, but rather through people's passion, desiring the sharing.
And keep in mind the principles of free will. See how Emma asked you, tell me if you want it, rather than just saying, I'm sending it to everyone.
Yeah, don't force anybody to receive anything.
Yeah.
Makes sense? And if, by the way, if you have to leave now, feel comfortable?
See you.
Yeah. See you later. Yeah. Feel comfortable leaving at any time. I'm just explaining what we're doing, that's all. So obviously for Mary and I, our goal now is to be able to share, have more time sharing is the goal. So we want to try to do 4 to 4.5 months overseas, generally, and about a couple of months or 6 weeks in Australia is our goal. And then we'll probably have 6 weeks home, because we need to also keep things going where we are and share with those people as well.
6 months, you mean?
6 months, sorry.
You said 6 weeks.
Did I? Yeah, 6 months. And so we want to obviously sort of have this sort of regular sharing that's going on. And we feel the more we can share, then you've got more material to share, and then you can share, and then more people will hear, and if more people hear, more people might respond, and if more people respond, then there'll be improvements in the general condition of the world, if more people respond to the truth.
How have you found it being in person versus watching? For some of you, it's the first time. Yeah.
So it's a bit different in person, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Different.
When you're watching it on the telly, you sort of go, I can zone out of that. I can tune out of that. You know what I mean? But when you're in person, it's sort of different. And also there's spirits here that you don't feel when you're watching on telly either. So obviously that's right. And you often see the interactions occurring and everything. And you can feel them, can't you, in the moment too. So that often has a powerful effect, Also, it can be quite frustrating because you take home with you a group of spirits who want to stop you. So you've got to watch that when you leave here too, by the way, because there are groups of spirits who hang around Mary and I just waiting to influence you badly, right? So there's a negative influence also following us around at times. Right?
The antidote to that is have character, have your moral...
But anyway, there may have been spirits around that didn't like it that much too.
Of course,
Have people
there's
going
many
that
spirits
way,
who
so-
come to our events and they don't like what I'm saying.
Yeah. But even Nicholas is saying, even around you in general. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And they'll take the opportunity at times to influence you badly. Stephen, you wanted to?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, is there any other recommended material to read besides Through the Mist?
Paget
Paget
messages.
messages. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I feel reading the Paget messages is a must, is what I feel. Now, Mary and I do have downloadable Paget messages on the website, but we don't actually produce the Paget messages books. Now, a problem that I see happening is that some of the people who are producing the books are actually modifying the messages.
Yeah.
So that is a bit of a problem, and that's something that we feel if we had a little team that could actually get the original messages and actually republish those rather than modifying them. And when I say modifying, they're leaving paragraphs out and they're mostly leaving things out, but sometimes changing words, but mostly leaving things out. And we don't agree with that. We want them to be their original.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I did a recent search just the other day for some original ones, which were called Angelic Revelations of Divine Truth, written in 1960 and 50s, published by originally by Dr. Stone, who was one of Paget's friends. But I found it very hard to find an original copy, unfortunately. So now if you do buy them, you'll find that some of them have been modified, and they also have these little additional things because they're upset with me. They're trying to put little additional messages in that Jesus is still in heaven and all these other things as well. So they're trying to... some of them even tried to have a meeting with me a few months ago, thinking that because I hadn't spent much time sharing in the last few years that I must have changed my mind, things like that. And so,
but on the website, you're going to find...
But on our website, you'll find them. But unfortunately, they're in PDF form. I suppose if you have a PDF reader or some kind of thing, you could use that for reading them. And they are the originals. Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, as much as we're able to do. So I'd recommend reading them for sure. And particularly focus on the messages that talk about God, love, truth, faith.
The laws.
There's a whole heap of messages that are more about spirit interactions, which are quite fascinating, but the ones that are based on faith, truth, love, God, laws, these are the messages that are, powerful messages for your soul. The other messages are interesting and also illustrate a lot of spirit interactions, which in a very interesting manner. So they're worth reading, but they're not focused on those fundamental truths. Yeah, Julius?
I just want to say you've recommended about a year ago or so to 3 things, and one of them was to read the Paget messages every morning after waking up.
Yeah.
And I just read just a little paragraph.
Yeah.
But I found it very very beneficial.
Yeah. I think I've read them in total probably 30 times or more now. Each time I read them, because we have a memory of, writing them, and there's things in there that I go, it's a pity you didn't write exactly what we meant, but for the most part, they're quite accurate, and also when it comes to God's love and truth, and when it comes to sin, they won't mislead you. They're accurate in that regard. Yeah. Thanks, Fabian.
Isn't there a commented version online?
Not by me, no. If there is a commented version, I'd mistrust comments, probably.
Jesus and Mary, it says.
Sorry?
Not by us, no.
Commented by Jesus and Mary.
Yeah, not us.
Kind of writing by email exchange.
On our website?
No.
No, that's not us.
No. Now, somebody might have put together some of our comments that we've published in other things about the messages and put them on there, but I don't know. And we can't control other people do, you know.
Yeah.
Actually, it says that there is an email exchange, but it's not really specified if it's you or Jesus, Mary, and then Mary being happy to have a say, commenting on those things finally as she couldn't while.
No, that's not me.
That's not
so
us.
on.
No, that's not me.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and-
interesting.
Yeah,
I don't know
and
who that
a lot of people who feel attached to the Paget messages, my being on earth is very challenging as an idea to them, right? And so they are trying to do their best to discredit me while at the same time promote the messages. Yeah, which I find very interesting given they're my messages. Yeah.
But in any case, why spend time discrediting people when you can just promote truth?
When you can just promote truth, yeah. Yeah. Fine.
I mean, so I think in one of the messages you said that your return will be in spirit, as at that time you hadn't found out how to get reborn.
Correct.
But
truth is a progressive thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we as humans very much like to stick to the written things and only see this as
correct.
the
Well,
truth.
really, many people who are reading the Paget messages are treating them like the Bible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where the Christians are saying, this is the Bible, this is the only word of God, there's no other word of God, there's no, it's like an infinite God made a limited book, and that's good, is the general feeling.
As if it could be.
Yeah,
limited, yeah.
and then of course the people who are doing this with the Paget messages are fundamentally doing the same thing. They're basically saying it's a limited book, limited by, and that's this, it's a full truth, and it's not. Obviously, it's very clear if you read the Paget messages, actually, that we weren't that happy with how much truth we shared in the messages. We felt there was a lot more truth to share, and we never got to share it. So it's very clear if you read the Paget messages that is true. The issue that the people who sort of guard the Paget messages have with me is that they are very angry about me claiming that I'm Jesus, right? So they feel that I'm undermining the messages even by mentioning them. Yeah. But the Paget messages are a very good resource to have more connection with truth. Yep. Those of you who come from a Christian background will recognise some of the teachings that eventually got distorted in Christianity in the messages as well. So you'll find them quite interesting as well as beneficial. But your development will determine your understanding of them. The more love you have, the more you will understand them. And we also made that quite clear when we gave the messages to Ned, our friend, James Paget, we call him Ned, and he, when we gave him the messages, we made it quite clear to him that his understanding of them would depend upon his soul condition. And I'd like to say the same to you. Your understanding of them will depend upon your soul condition. Besides that, so obviously one of the things we want to do too is to actually have a little publishing area of Divine Truth that gets all this spiritual material together and republishes it, because a lot of it is going out of print and out of publication for lots of different reasons. There's not a lot of interest in it around the world generally. And also it'd be nice to put it in different languages, because I think the Paget messages currently are in 12 languages from memory, but again, it's very dependent upon the soul condition of the individuals who did the translation as to how effective those translations are.
Mm.
Thank you. Just wanted to say, for the German-speaking people, there's a really readable, I find, translation of Through the Mists by Robert James Lees. It's called Reise in die Unsterblichkeit, all 3 parts. And of course, it helps to watch Mary's group along with it, the book group.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's good.
Now, Through the Mists is interesting because a lot of people believe that they were written by divine love spirits, but they weren't. And a lot of people were quite shocked to hear that. But none of the spirits who were involved in writing Through the Mists were actually on the divine love path. They are now, but they weren't then.
But it gives you very beautiful depiction of how God's laws work and the construction of the spirit world and all of those things.
They are very accurate, particularly the first 2 are very accurate. By the time it gets to the 3rd one and it starts talking about my life, it starts to become very inaccurate. So just bear that in mind if we can.
In one of the videos, you read an introduction of a book you were writing.
Yeah.
And I never found it, and
well, I haven't published it. Mary and I would like to write some books, but we don't have the time at the moment to do such a thing, and it's unlikely we'll get the time for the next few years. But we would love to do it because it, we've got sort of a unique. We've had 2,000 years of experience with God's way, and we've got a unique perspective, being that we were the ones who discovered it. So there's a lot of things we can share in that process that we haven't shared yet, and it would be lovely to be able to share it. But unfortunately, there's a limited amount of time of what we have available sharing, and then also Mary and I need to focus on growing ourselves, and in a lot of ways we've neglected that, particularly in the last 10 years. So one of our focal points now is making sure we continue our own progress. And some of you ask questions of why am I looking older and more unwell, and what was the general feeling of that I'm balding and generally getting older. Well, a lot of that has been because of lack of self-love issues that I'm now working through. And so it's going to take us time. Mary and I both have quite a lot of self-love issues because both of us have been heavily attacked since our birth on earth this time. So it's been a very abusive environment spiritually that we've grown up in. And so we're learning, we're still learning how to love ourselves. And in the process of doing that, we'll get more closer to our soul, and our soul will be able to, the love from our soul will help us continue to change in a positive way. At the moment, there's not a lot of love from our soul that we're allowing to our bodies at the moment because of our minds. Mary and I have both been quite intellectually dominant in our lives, and we're learning, we need to go through the experience of letting go of that dominance in order for our soul to properly connect. And I've been aware of that for the last 4 or 5 years, that I need to take strong action in that regard. But it does mean that I need to have alone time to do it. And that doesn't give me a lot of time to do other things like write books or do videos or those kind of things.
Yeah, I have another dream as well, to just put together books on kind of like topics or, because Jesus in particular has presented on lots of faith in so many different ways. And he did a series of talks at home that I don't know if there were some bootleg copies that maybe got onto Spotify. I don't know if they're still there, but really how to connect to God. You took a group through this process for about a year. And
we've been teaching every week for the last 5 years as well.
It was a very powerful kind of talk, and I would love to kind of put that in book form as well. Yeah, without kind of comments and tidying up the language a bit. So
we have a lot of backlog of material that obviously hasn't been shared because we haven't had the time to share it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because I like to talk to people about divine truth.
Yeah.
And one of the things I hear often is, I like to read more.
Yeah.
So
okay.
We actually feel that reading is more effective than watching a video. And the reason why is because reading requires more concentration, and it also requires more peace and quiet. And as a result, you can get more inspired. So one of our major goals is to get away from videos, actually, and go more to producing books that people can read. And how to publish those books, well, that's a question in itself, but we would like to do that. But again, that requires Mary and I having the time to write them and to formulate them and write them. Originally, the plans of the 14, because remember there were 14 of us who came here. Of the others, there's only really, one other who is consciously connecting to God's way, other than us two, which is Cornelius, and then the others are in various states of rage about the whole thing. but the original intention was some of them who are experts, far better than us at writing and other things like that. They have a natural aptitude to it. Mary and I are more, you'd call us like the managers, I suppose. The structural organisation is our forte. And some of the others of 14 have specific skills. And originally the intention was that they would be using those skills by now. But of course, you know, it's all to do with their will. So, you know, I don't know how long it's going to take for their will to be exercised. And it may not be exercised ever. So it means other people exercising their will eventually to put things together. And this is where something, so Mary and I want to, basically what we're trying to do is get enough time to share with you truths. And then on top of that, we want to get enough time where we can start writing some things so that those things can be more in permanent form. This was something I didn't do in the first century. And I think somebody asked me, what do I regret from the first century? That's probably one, well, it's not really a regret, because but I wished in a way that more was written, you know. More, of course, the likelihood was that it was going to get distorted anyway, but it would have been good to have more written. Yeah.
There are, there's transcripts, don't you?
Yeah, there are transcripts. There was a team doing transcripts, and some of you even might have been involved in the team. I think Sinissa was at one point. Yeah. But the trouble is the person who managed our team wasn't running it in a loving manner at the time, and then we changed it over to Kate running it, and myself and Kate had a lot of programs on that we would, one of them was books getting written, another one was changing the websites and other things like that. But Kate passed last year. Started last year now. And she was a great loss to our little program of trying to share more. Yeah. She was a very good programmer, and on top of that, she was very open to truth and loved the truth and passionate about it. And she was also very open to listening to my guidance with regard to technology, and she was a great help. But she's passed. She's in the second sphere of the spirit world at the moment, and she's enjoying her life there, so she doesn't sort of regret passing. But we often talk to her and say,
miss you.
Yeah, miss you, yeah. Yep. Stephen?
Do you ever have any contact with other spiritual leaders? Maybe like Neil Donald Walsh, Conversations with God? And how do they treat you?
Every spiritual leader I've ever spoken to up until now has not liked me. So
generally they ignore us, though. Nobody takes us seriously enough to.
Yeah. There are many problems with teachings of different organisations on earth, and when we have a conversation, I start highlighting those problems, and of course they don't want to hear them. So there's fundamentally nobody really wants to talk to me about these matters, and it's interesting because my feeling is one of the most interesting things that we could do would be to have like a television show where it says the man who claims to be Jesus talking about religion or something like that, you know, but the trouble is the spirits at the moment around us don't want us to do that because it will be way too logical and way too appealing. And they know that, so they're trying to... At the moment, there's an orchestrated attempt in the spirit world, and it's also a growing attempt on earth through influence to discredit Mary and myself as much as possible. Yep. Which is to be expected. You know, that happened in the first century for me as well, where the Pharisees used to follow me around trying to discredit me with everybody all the time, which is eventually why we finished up having conversation. But there's the trouble with truth, if you think about it as a trouble, is that it confronts error, and whenever error is confronted, people get emotional about it and they get really upset and angry. And that's... It doesn't matter which spiritual leader you talk to on earth, the majority of them are really undeveloped when it comes to love and truth and humility, faith, and truth with regard to their relationship with God. And as a result, they're constantly wanting to be in conflict with what we teach, whether they see a point in it or not sometimes. Yeah. Where were we next?
Charlotte?
Do you mind me answering these questions, guys? Charlotte?
If you need to go, you can go.
If you need to go, yeah.
I often recommend the Secrets of the Universe talk as a beginner's video.
Yeah.
Would you recommend that, or would you recommend to just say the channel and the people can watch whatever they like?
Well, it's hard, isn't it? Because the Secrets of the Universe does cover quite a lot of things in 2 days, doesn't it? That helps give people a bit of an introduction. The problem is the production of it's very poor, and this is the problem we have with a lot of what we've produced. I have actually thought about tearing the whole thing down and not having anything shared, but that's probably not going to be good either. So we do feel at some point in the future we'll do more polished sort of presentations about some of those things. But at this stage, what's there is there. And we just got to let it do its thing. You'll have noticed that I'm a lot less pandering to audiences than your audience compared to previous audience. And that's because Mary and I are growing, right? We're changing and getting more in harmony with God's love in that regard. So the trouble for a lot of people who have heard our old material is they think we're still those people. And so when they come along, they feel quite sort of confronted. So sometimes the old material causes us grief in the sense of, people have an expectation when they come that's not the expectation we meet. Yeah. Ben? Yeah.
I would like to see a documentary where the Jews is shown, so like in TV or...
Yeah, almost every person... You want to make it? Yeah. Almost every person who has made a documentary with us in the past has come from a very antagonistic point. And so what they're doing is they're coming from an attacking point. They want to pull us down, and really what they want is the money shot, which is me saying I'm Jesus, and then they want to criticise that. That's what we've found for the most part. There's been a couple that are not like that, but none of them who have made documentaries. We've had a couple of media people who have been...
TV segments.
TV segments, I suppose you call it. That were live, which is what I prefer, live. But if it's somebody we're going to work with a documentary that's pre-recorded, it's going to have to be someone we trust, because most people are untrustworthy, and they keep modifying things we say, and they put it purposely pull it out of context to almost make it turn into the opposite thing that I've said, even sometimes. And it's very frustrating to spend all that time. And in fact, in some cases, like there was one channel that they did almost 4 days straight of filming. Must have cost them thousands of dollars, because they had a guy with a camera, a couple of, guy with a sound thing as well, and it must have cost them a mint to do it. And they didn't use any of the material at all because it was all too convincing. So they just, instead what they do is they invent a story, which a lot of the media have actually done. It's really quite interesting what they do. They've invented stories in order to make it look like a certain thing that they want it to look like. And every media person who comes to talk to me directly finds me way too reasonable, far more reasonable than what they're expecting, right? And so, and too sane as well. They want sort of me to be insane. Yeah. So when they find a person who's saner than what they're expecting, you can feel the disappointment in them, because they were going to get the money shots through the insanity, right? And so when I'm too sane, when I'm too reasonable, and also kind and everything and considerate of them, they go, well, now there's no money here for us. And so some of them had to go away and create a completely different story. And there's one person in particular who did it right at the beginning, and that story just keeps getting repeated over and over again. Yeah. Else?
So do they use the thing to make it look like you're speaking, the fake
Well, at the moment, there's no chat GP, whatever, thing of making out I'm speaking thing. Yeah. But it wouldn't surprise me that somebody does it, you know what I mean, where there's deep fakes and whatever else. And this is the beauty of bootleg copies, is it's hard to fake them when you do it sort of not organised, but when it comes to the organised stuff, yeah. By the way, I disagree completely with artificial intelligence, almost completely, I should say, for lots of different reasons and that are connected with God's reasons. But I won't go into that here. But the problem with faking something is if you can't tell it's real, then how can you trust it? And if it's a machine, how can you trust that it's not been influenced by the programmer of the machine in some way or another?
Well, it has.
It has, yeah. I've been a programmer in my life. I know what it's like when you're programming, and I know also how much your own emotional injuries affect the program you make. And this is a problem that most people are not considering. And so what I see with regard to a lot of artificial intelligence is if they apply it to divine truth, it's going to get turned into a mess. Yeah? Which is obviously not something I'd like to see. Franz, and then up to back.
I mean, how to discriminate it is similar to how to discriminate with the media reporting. So, like, if you develop your feeling and consciousness and sincerity, so to just feel.
Correct.
And also feel like...
And if you're connected to God, you will start feeling something's off here.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Or is this politician speaking the truth, or does it fit?
Yeah.
So you will be able to feel all that.
It's like the superpower God gave everyone.
Yeah.
It's just live in your soul. You detect lies really easily.
It'll be very clear,
Yeah, it's a serious problem that we're going to face on Earth, that how much of the information you're actually hearing is actually true.
Mm.
You know, already a lot of it's not true. Already a lot of it's not true. And we find in our personal life that almost everything the media has said, probably 98% of it, not true. You know, and yet it's everybody who listens thinks it's true. And many of you even think some of the things being said are true. And then when I say to you, well, that's not true either, and that's not true either, and okay, you know, sometimes it's not quite obvious what isn't true and what is, and you know, I see the media in particular is a power tool that is used by a few people to control the thoughts of the majority. At the moment, that's how it's being used. And it's a very destructive way of having media. If the media was more honest, it would be different. But unfortunately, the media, like many other people, are self-motivated. In other words, they're self-motivated, selfishly motivated. Often we've met many of them. Remember, hundreds of them, and the majority of them we're finding have their own goals of being popular, their own goals of being well known, liked. You know, one media fellow said, "I've got 600,000 followers. How many have you got?" I don't know if I said 2 or something, but as if that makes any difference to what I'm speaking as truth or not. But, you know, this is how the media, many of the media want that notoriety. They want that, they want the adulation of many. And so quite often their motives are distorted when it comes to sharing truth. That's what we've found.
I remember a documentary where there was a guy and he was attacking you quite a lot.
Yeah.
And you said to him that you can feel that at some point he's going to change his mind.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if he already did that.
Oh, no. I was referring to when he hit the spirit world. Oh. Yeah, no, he's not going to change his mind on earth. No, but I know that he will in the spirit world. He'll actually go through a lot of regret, actually, because he actually started as a minister. He's a Uniting Church minister, and he got involved in the media to do what's called cult exposés, and so that was his purpose of meeting us. And he spent weeks with us, didn't he? Stayed in my home actually for a few days, even and. It was just really interesting. Like, you know, in the end, he started getting more and more attacking, but on screen only. So he wanted he wanted the people who were watching to see that he didn't agree with me, and so, but off screen, he was like asking me questions about this and asking me questions about that. But in the end, like, I could see it was all manipulation. You know,
it's very duplicitous.
Very
person.
duplicitous. Yeah, very deceitful. and deceitful to his audience, because actually the way he was treating us off camera was not the same way he was treating us on camera. And so I pointed that out to him. Of course, he got angry about that and then started attacking more. And then, and I said to him, well, yeah, at some point in the future, you're going to regret your choices here, And he will. There's many, like I said, the people who killed me regret their choices. They regretted their choices in the end. Yeah. Is it, who else had their hand up there? No? All right, now I wanted to share a bit more about our plans. So our plans are that we would like to come back to Europe, and we want to come back regularly. But of course, donations is our main thing that prevents us from coming back. So we're trying to also reduce the costs. The problem with visiting many sites is that the costs of visiting the sites are quite steep. And also some places like Austria here is quite expensive, actually, to live here, isn't it? See you guys. It's quite expensive and everything. So what we would like to do is try to find some ways of sort of doing a cheap version of getting here.
We'll go budget next year.
Go budget, sort of getting here, not change a lot, because the more we change, the more tiring it is.
And there's lots of reasons.
Our general process in these weeks are travel Monday or Tuesday. So today is our last day here. Normally, if this was a normal week for the rest of the trip, it'd be tomorrow we're travelling.
No, tomorrow packing.
Tomorrow packing. Tuesday travelling.
Yeah.
We get to the place Tuesday, in the evening. We've got to get all our food and check in and all these other things. Then we've got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday we're seminar again. And you can imagine, obviously it's pretty tiring to just travel, hardly any break at all, straight into the seminar again for 3 or 4 days straight. And then it also doesn't give us much time to socialise with you, like to spend a bit of time and get to know you either. So we probably next time would like to change that a bit, where it's not so stressful and we're more in one place for a month, and then we have a big event where hundreds of people can come, and then possibility of having smaller things where people who can stick around and we can spend a bit of time with them over the coming months after the weeks after that. Does that make sense? Before we move on. So that's our plans. At home, we're also trying to put together a studio at Phoebe's home. I mentioned Phoebe before. She's given us 2 rooms of her house because she has an internet connection that we don't have. And this internet connection will allow us to do online discussions with you guys. So we're hoping that when we're back in Australia, anybody here who has a little group, that we might be able to tee up a time where we have a couple of hours online, where we can communicate from that studio to you guys. It's going to require a bit of tech to be set up and so forth, but we're hoping the next time we get back to Australia that we'll be able to set up that tech and get that operational.
So that'll be a bit based on your desire and you guys, getting in touch and driving that, and we're feeling you're sincere that you want to kind of practice this stuff and we want to help you. And we're thinking we'll record it and it'll just go straight online type of thing. So there's no... We feel with almost everything we do that it's good to record it, because then more people benefit, rather than just a few. And so that's what we're trying to do. But as I said, the sharing of it is where things are falling down at the moment because of a lack of time. So anyway, that's our goals for the future. We'll see whether they come about. we don't know, of course. But that's what we're hoping to do. So we're hoping at some point we'll see you guys in the future. Never know. Some of you not, maybe. Some of you, yes. Depends on your sin a bit, doesn't it? It depends how... If you don't mind your sin being confronted, then I'm sure we'll see each other in the future. If you feel that truth fight between truth and error and go, I don't want my error gone, then maybe we won't see each other so often. It's been a pleasure, though. It's been a pleasure to meet so many new ones and see old faces, and thank you for your participation.
And hopefully you've, if not enjoyed yourself, at least learnt something. And we would also like to thank the people who've been involved in organising. So,
Yep,
so
that's Alex and Olga. And can I also thank some of you looked for venues that we didn't end up using, so in your own countries and stuff. I know in Poland and Germany, you know, different people did that. I really appreciate that. I wanted to go everywhere, but we'd be travelling for the next 3 years. So thank you for that. And
also a lot of times we go, okay, there's these options for later, you know, like, you know, that are possible for later. Well, hopefully.
Well, and also you come and you have the experience, you get a bit of a sense of what might work better and not. And
at the moment, we're looking for venues in Porto in Portugal where there's like 250 seats and big enough to have almost everybody in Europe come to one location.
Would you guys come to Portugal if we were in Portugal next year? Yes. Yeah. So Elsa definitely.
Elsa's definite about it. So we're also on this trip looking at options for the next trip in terms of what's the best course of action. And what we're finding is that some places are very expensive to do things. Belgium was very expensive to venue-wise. Here in Austria, very expensive to live. Places like Portugal, cheaper to live and so forth.
Well, and hopefully affordable for everyone coming from all the regions in Europe to come. And also...
So we're trying to balance that. And
better for us to do less stops. There's less airline usage. There's less wastage of even just the stuff we buy and all those things.
And so that's what we'll probably try to do next time we come.
We'll try that out. We'll see how it goes, you know, experimenting at this stage of what's going to work.
We're experimenting with what works and what doesn't, really.
And what works really for the
for
participants,
everybody.
you know, as well as ourselves. So.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing you guys again in the future at some point. We look forward to seeing in particular your progress. You know, that's the thing we'd like to see the most. And also developing your relationship with God. God wants you to have a relationship with her. She desires your love, and actually you don't know it, but she often desires your love more than you desire hers. Yeah. She wants to know you. She knows you already, but she wants to know you on a personal level. And so if you can remember that in your future days and in terms of ask God for that love and desire that love in a sincere manner, then of course it's going to benefit you a lot for your future, but also you'll feel loved. Now, oftentimes people feel that for the first time in their life. Yeah. Okay, so...